Essentially, this is for a person or the teachers who are teaching school kids.
Okay.
So this is an important paradox here. Though I tried to, in fact, somehow mold it. So in my deliberation, probably you'll find that I tweaked a bit here and there, so that it's become more kind of acceptable in our kind of environment. And perhaps some more time was needed. So I just initially I started very leisurely. Then I was literally saw that I was rushing through the pages. This was an important dilemma. And something about the author, so Loanne Johnson. The interesting part about her is that she was not a career teacher, right? And initially, in fact, she was into a very interesting career that was the U.S. Marine. So she worked for 9 years in the active military services. And there, in fact, she was basically a first journalist, first class in the Navy, and a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps, which is basically combat duties. So in a very active military life. And later on, she was working in a corporate for almost 11 years. So roughly 20 years of her prime was in some other areas. And later on, when she thought of, well, that teaching is an interesting area where she should try. So this was a kind of afterthought, and then she improved upon her qualification because US is very different like India, right? For teaching, you need a teacher's license. And even if it's a license, then it should have to come from a very, very credible institute. If it's not coming from a very, very credible organization, probably you will not get a chance or opportunity. So this is about the author. There is a lot is there about her, but I thought to confine myself to this much only. And apart from this book, she has written some non-fiction works also, and one kind of fiction novel also. So let's begin with setting a premise, and this is basically the in a prelude she has mentioned that when what happened when she got the first teaching assignment, and since she was into a very active military life, and she was basically also had the experience of a corporate, so she thought that well, teaching is going to be a very easy cakewalk kind of a thing, and the day when she was told that, well, you have to go and teach a class, and this class was of a high school level class, if you compare with our standard. So this assignment was given to her because the current teacher, she has left in between after resigning, right? So there was an opportunity, and she was asked whether she can take a class, and she agreed. So she just quickly prepared herself for the whole thing, and with a lot of motivation and a lot of, say, the spade work what she did, she went to a class, and after a brief introduction, she started. And then what happened, she saw that the class is not responding. I mean, they were very dull kind of students, and there was no kind of say, even class was not responding to her even action, or even when she was trying to probe them, nothing was happening. And even students realize that she is struggling hard to build a rapport. Then somebody yelled from the crowd, "It's not going to make any difference, whatever you teach." And she was awestruck. "What did you say?" Then another boy also says similar kind of a thing. Let's see, our earlier teacher, she has already given us the F grade marked in red ink. This is the way they grade this. Red ink means something like final from your side. So this was what was told to her, that already they have been graded F with the red ink, so probably nothing is going to change. And then she was totally speechless. She said, "Well, but I haven't seen those grade book. Rather, I have an intention to," and in order to motivate and move the things further, she said, "Well, I have an intention to start with my own grade book and with a fresh grade." Then she said, "Rather, I am trying, rather my plan is that I would start with grade A in red ink." So now here, the moment she uttered these words, when she could feel the kind of a ripple which went across the class, and she could see that, well, now people were little attentive. but it's very difficult to establish a rapport. And in between, somebody say she's lying, right? Then there was another kind of a whisper that what if she's not lying? Then there was another girl. She intervened. She said perhaps she may be correct. And then some boy intervened. He said I never got A in my life, so why not to give a chance to her? And that was the very moment when she got her first important lesson, important philosophy, which in fact she has acknowledged that had served her well throughout her teaching career. And that was when students believe success is possible, so they will try. So this was a small kind of prelude to the book. And then there are various chapters. I tried to, in fact, not fall into the trap of that, but just in order to maintain some kind of categorization, I have followed to an extent. So the very first question is that, are we a teaching or a teacher material? What all it takes to be a good teacher? And then if you see the kind of a list of the kind of excuses, usually called laundry list, then a lot of excuses usually you see that why one failed to be a successful teacher. So they may complain about the boys, the disruptive students, apathetic administrator, overwhelming stack of paperwork, lunchroom politics, pressure from the parents, peers, and of course it leads to a lot of exhaustion, mental as well as emotional. So this is the reason why when many of us they fail as a teacher. How to decide that whether you are a good teacher or you have those basic elements which can make you a successful teacher? Suppose you are very passionate about your profession, right? And suppose a lot of motivation is there, you have got a very solid academic qualification and good credential. So you have got a teacher training also from very say illustrious university, say. Does it make you a good teacher? So the answer is loud no. It could be a kind of an excellent background, but these attributes, I mean, not necessary that they will make you a good teacher. For being a good teacher, the author has suggested few attributes, which I've just bringing to all of you. First is that you should have abundant reserves of patience and the tact, right? So that's the most important thing. Then a great sense of humor, right? A great sense of humor is also very important element. And then she has mentioned about the, I beg your pardon, but about the administrative monster. So the top head, the administrator, will keep demanding, I need this, I need that, and this is the time, and by end of the year, this. So you have to supplement to those things. You have to cater to these other off-teaching requirements and duties also. Then there is another element, wealth and the prestige. If you think that these are very important things, and it has some space of some kind of a position in your life, perhaps you're not a right cut for a teacher, because probably in this profession, probably you cannot earn a lot. Even this is a story of a US, right? Then, of course, a very elementary thing that you must have a liking for students, right? If you don't like students, then perhaps you cannot go long. And here, author took a very nice analogy of say, wishful thinking of many of us having a pup at home. So when we raise puppy or pup, probably we feel that, well, there will be kind of unbounded love. The pup will be offered to you whenever you will reach back. Probably it will come, pounce on you, grab you, cuddle you, right? But at the same time, you have to make sure, you have to basically take care, because there would be moments when it would be peeing or poops or vomit. So you cannot say distract, or you cannot say that, well, you don't like this part and you like only the better part. So you have to have that kind of a natural affection towards the students. Then there is another kind of a set of people. Set of people here means the would-be teachers, who usually get warm up to the thought that, well, probably they are a teacher, very learned, they will walk into a class and then they will be facing a sea of very obedient looking, quiet students, right? And they are ready to just wish you, and they will do a kind of a good morning teacher in a very rhythmic way, then they will sit down quietly. So normally they grow up with this whole idea, this impression that, well, being a teacher is like this. But the moment the same kind of a student, they find they are so noisy, so messy, at times even a lot of smells, then they are disrespectful, at the time selfish also, they go into shock. Because perhaps the whole idea about having a student or handling a class is very different. What they had basically thought of and what normally they see in a real life. So this is also something there. Another important attribute is that one need to be very, very persistent and optimistic. So never give up kind of a thing. So normally, these are the attributes which usually one should have. People in marketing area probably, you might have seen the Indian Army advertisement. Do you have it in you or not? So right, so same kind of thing. Do you have it in you or not? But of course, author she has been trying to delineate few important elements which certainly are kind of a must to have in any teacher. They are like this. The one need to have a very, very solid grasp of a motivational technique, the leadership ability, the conflict resolution skill, because I don't see that anybody can carry on as a teacher without facing these kind of a dilemma in class. Of course, the human psychology and reasonably computer literacy, and we produce second and a teachable curriculum. That this second and teachable curriculum means you should have that ability to jot down the things, what we call it in Hindi, gagar mein sagar. So you have to have that ability, that knack to produce copious small notes which can be of a good use. Then another important attribute is ability to think on your feet. It means spontaneity, because there will be a moment in a class when you are teaching and students may come and ask some questions. So probably you cannot think that, well, this is not, you cannot say this is not in syllabus, or probably I will think over it. It should come all of a sudden then. So that kind of a element or that kind of a attribute is also kind of a must-have for would-be teachers. So here different teachers, they use different techniques and approaches to teach, but successful teachers communicate clearly what they expect from the students and about their attitude about learning and the basic belief about the teacher-student relationship. The sooner you clear these things to students, probably the better it is for all would-be teacher. Then there's another interesting element which the author has brought out about the types of teacher. So she has categorized the teacher into three broad categories: the super teachers, then the excellent teachers, and the everyday good teachers, right? Then according to her, there is no other category, right? So if you see that, well, you are either in first, second, if not in first two, then suddenly you are in third one. So you are the teacher of technical ability. A super teacher here, it means that people who are basically have a highest order of emotion and the mental bent of mind for devoting their life for teaching. They are kind of people who come early, then there is no time for going back to home. They have clearly stated at home that teaching is my passion, that is my love. Probably family comes at second position. There is no priority for the family. Then each student is important for them, right? And these are the people who would go attend conferences, keep their qualification, upscaling their qualification, upgrading their qualifications. And they will make sure that each student is basically getting some kind of a benefits from them. And doors are always open, so there is no personal time for them. They will always be welcoming students. No weekend, no Sunday, no Monday, right? All day, they are working for the students. Another species of the teacher, or the kind of a teacher, they are basically the excellent teacher. They are also a teacher who enjoys their profession, but they have kept some time for the family also. So they have reserved some time as well. My family is also important. But it doesn't mean that they don't work for students. They also take that lot of work to home, like checking the grade papers and evaluating or say preparing for the lectures and so on. And they also work extra time or walk extra mile to see that students are getting benefited. And then there is another set of people, they are called the good teacher. For them, the priority is very, very clearly stated that, well, this much time I will devote for my profession and this is the time I will devote for my friends. Usually they pursue their hobbies, their personal liking, visit friends, families, and probably they don't entertain students during weekend or something. And they believe that, well, their job is only to teach that much, which will be good enough to move the students to the next level of education. Surprisingly, the author has said that, well, these teachers, since they balance their personal life and the professional life, so they don't burn out themselves and they continue in this profession for a long time, right? So I don't know what you're going to have from this, but this is again an important observation by the author. Then there is some kind of important tips which has been suggested in the book, that it is like, let me give you a little more idea about how author she has moved in the whole book. It's basically, there are chapters when you are preparing for the new session, new academic session, right? So she has spoken a lot about how to prepare, what to prepare, nothing to leave on chance. And then, of course, then there will be a day when there will be a first session followed by another. So how one can carry on. So here, what is very important, that you have to decide what kind of a personality you want to present. You want to see that, well, your students feel about you. So if you are going to behave in a, say, there is a caveat over here. Suppose you are a very serious person, a very serious teacher. But in a class, you try to behave in a very, very jocular way, right? You want to be a person who is very entertaining and amusing. Probably you will not go long. And students, they have a very fine knack, and they will make it out that, well, you are mocking up the whole thing. And very soon, probably things will be out, and it will be very, very difficult for any such person to again recreate his original persona. So that's very, very important that you have to think in advance that, well, what kind of a personality you want to reflect in a class. Okay, then comes another one, dress the part. This is very, very important. What you are wearing, on what occasion you are wearing. Students, they are very, very careful and they note it very carefully. For example, suppose you are going to deal a topic which needs some kind of a spontaneity, or it's basically a kind of a very creative kind of a class is going to be. The topic is like this. Then perhaps the casual dress would be more appealing. It suits the whole occasion. But suppose there is a class where you need to develop a concept, some important thing, or you have to discuss about examination. In that case, probably the more professional dress like a suit or some kind of a formal trousers and shirt, that will be more appropriate. Another thing is about train your little darlings, means the students over here. What kind of a response you expect from them? Suppose you have raised a question. So, how the student, they should respond to that question. Whether they will be raising their hand and waiting for their turn, and then you will give a chance to the person you wish to answer, or probably you have allowed a kind of a well free go, laissez-faire style, and anybody who gets a chance, probably that person can speak. Now here again, as Dr. Sir, he mentioned other day that, well, you have to see the lot, their age group, the subject, the complexity that is there in subject, and you have to shift the gear. So there cannot be one perfect way in which you can basically say that, well, in my class nobody would cross talk or nobody would jump the gun unless and until I ask that person to speak, or you have to take turn. Right? It's your call, depending upon what suits you guys. Another thing is control your classroom and not the student. Now this is very, very important. Creating a discipline, creating an environment in a class is a task of a teacher. And if you are bringing an environment which is basically not very conducive and probably it's threatening it is of a conflict, then probably it is going to compromise, or the learning is going to be compromised. So this is something very important. And environment is a responsibility of a teacher. Now here there is again one important thing. See, when here the author has mentioned classroom, so again it's about the kindergarten or a nursery school or say a primary school classroom where teachers do not move to different classes. The class remains the same, and there is a chapter on that, and you have to maintain, even your decor of a room has to be very welcoming, amenable, because say if you are dealing with a mature student, probably some light or few light or even dark areas are also fine, but if it's basically you are dealing with the kids, probably it need to be properly lit with proper kind of a board and charts and display of charts and other things. So this is point number 4, that classroom environment, maintenance of that is the responsibility of a teacher. If you are basically bringing up an environment of a conflict, probably you will see that students are not learning. Another thing, probably we hardly notice this thing, plan for the bathroom break. Now, here she brought some interesting stories that there were students who would not go for a washroom break during the regular break time because they have been facing some kind of a bullies, right? Now see here. So when they see that these bullies are there and they are bothering them, so deliberately they will avoid going to use the washroom areas during the regular break time. And now, because there is a natural call, then they will ask for the break during the class time. And then there is an issue, how often you should permit, right? And teacher cannot be very strict. And well, since the break was given, you should have avoided that time. So one need to understand the psychology. And in case if you notice as a teacher that somebody is, every day that person has this kind of a habit, then there are other areas to be probed, that why this person is not going to the washroom during the regular break time. Then the prejudices, right? Here again a very interesting thing. We all have our own set of prejudices. There may be a number of reasons for these prejudices. It could be because of our cultural reasons, maybe our language, maybe our look, maybe skin color, maybe hair color, maybe the food habits. But here, what is very important that we must get rid of it, because these are the things which we have developed because of we have heard or we have listened or we have been told these kind of stories. For example, in US, the black and the Hispanic, they are the people who are not treated at par with the regular white community. So she was trying to explain that although she never faced, she is a white and she has been brought up in a community which was all white community. But she was told that people who are black or Hispanic, they are very violent and you should not interact with them, avoid befriending them and so on. But this is not good. And even throughout her teaching career, she has been telling to her students that, well, on these things, anybody has no control. Suppose somebody has born in a black family. What is the fault of that person, right? Or somebody's skin color is very different. Somebody is yellow in appearance, right? So there's no, I mean, these are the factors which is beyond anybody's control. So you have to get rid of it. Another important thing here, she said that she admitted that she had her own prejudices against these people. But there was a good way she suggested how to get rid of these prejudices, how we can basically improve upon this factor. So she said that, well, since she had this idea that she is in fact a little repulsive towards black and Hispanic people, so she tried to befriend such people. And more she befriended them and she started spending more time with such kind of people, she realized that they are very good. Rather, many of times she has been, terrorized by the white people. But this kind of experience was never there with the black people. So this was a good way to, in fact, mellow down the prejudices which normally people they carry. Then another important thing, probably we all have been doing, knowingly or unknowingly, this thing. This is about the casual remark, right? And with the permission of a chair, I would also like to state here one thing which I experienced. This is about, see, as a teacher, many a times we motivate somebody, we say some good words, and probably we forget that, right? And but those words are very very important for the student. So here again the author has quoted 2-3 examples when she quoted, she said something very very motivating, positive thing about students, and these students they were basically worked upon those areas. Perhaps they thought that it's something good, and they worked upon, and they turned out to be very very outstanding people in their life. So their parents also turned up and they thanked to this author. Then there was a moment when she realized that how many times I curse somebody or said different things because they are not coming. And I have experience here. I have taught, I don't know how many numbers of students so far. Many of them, they are working with one of the best institutions in the world, as far as Google, maybe in the best of the 4 top consulting companies. But one incident is there which really haunts me day and night. It is about one student in Noida I was teaching, and he just passed out, and then after 4-5 years he again came back. He was a local person from a Jat community, very well, means a rich fellow. And usually normally the people who are basically the cash rich people over there, they hardly pay any attention for developing their brain, right? They believe in developing their bronze, right? So, and he turned up to a college, and then there was some small interaction, and he said, "Sir, you once you said that this boy has no career, right? And really I don't have any career." And this was just happened because he was brought to a discipline committee because of certain reason, and because he was having a proximity to local group, he brought few people from outside. And this was the reason I said this thing. But a small terse remark, and he took it to his heart. And I felt so bad about this whole incident that this is one of the most nightmarish thing which has happened to me as a teacher, which is my career here. So this is basically something very very important which we need to be very very careful about. So be careful everything what you say. Every single day may be recorded in your students' head forever. Then another thing here about preparation. So this is what I was referring to. That when you are a teacher, then you have to prepare your classroom, the whole sitting arrangement. Then in case of children, then there's a very typical arrangement in US system. Because I'm reading a big book, so I cannot take liberties. So here they have a typical system. The board compartment is there. Then in the same room there is a reading compartment, right? Then there will be a kind of a compartment or a place where timeout, you can see the timeout corner. So if somebody is coming late, so that person will be asked to sit over there in the corner. Then there is one space or one corner that they call as a detention. So if you have been punished, you will ask to get up and go and sit over there as a detention. So this is how you have to arrange right from the right in the beginning, before your academic trimester or the semester or the year starts. And then comes another thing here. When suppose now this is the time when your semester is about to start, and this is say first day, and you are going to address your new set of students. So here is say let me give you. So I'm just going to start with the first topic. Start with a smile. Rest of the things will follow. Here, in fact, a first day environment has been created in a book. There's a lot of hustle bustle in the school where she is teaching, and now she is a senior teacher, and she went to her room, and then all of a sudden what happened that the bell rang, students started pouring in, but she was surprised that still, even though the bell had rung, but still the students, they were coming, few were late, and then she started with her introduction. And she was about to, in fact, move to, after the introduction, completing introduction, she was about to move to tell the procedures, different procedures. say procedure for washroom, right? And then there was an intervention, somebody knocked at the door and said, well, there are two students sitting in your room and they are supposed to be in another room. So she said, fine, okay. So she just sent those boys. Then she was about to start, all of a sudden there was an announcement, there's a mic system also in the classes. That well, bus route number, these, they have been changed. Again she stopped. After a while again she started. And then in between there was another person came in. So what was happening that there was a lot of destruction. A very important thing here, that in this whole commotion, whole chaos, one need to be very careful that you should not lose your smile or your demo, because people, all the set of students who are sitting over there, they are watching you. And here the author has used a very important idea of a psychology, that our whole mind, it takes less than a fraction of a second to evaluate unfamiliar faces, whether they are friendly or they are foe, right? And accordingly, what's that impression? Because they are of our students of very, very impressionable, and very soon they will grab it and that's going to stay. Then there's another thing which he mentioned, that well, our mind is basically of a kind that if you are smiling, then of course it's natural instinct of a mind to reply back with a smile. So here the author has suggested that well, we used to, a teacher, a good teacher, need to use psychology as well as a biology, right? And try to in fact have a good mix of it to handle a class. And this holy smile need not to be missed or lost, because these chaos and all kind of a commotion will certainly pass on. But this very moment to make a first good impression, it will pass on very quickly. So one should not miss out this burst. This is very, very important. Then she later on moved on to keep your distance. Don't keep your distance. Now this is something interesting. If you go to any traditional teaching system, or if you have somebody like a guru or somebody, so if you really go and ask for some teaching tips, that person would say, don't smile, or don't talk too much, or say, there's an old story of Aesop's, from there probably one can imbibe that familiarity breeds contempt. I hope many of you must have heard about it. So teachers are often trained, like all the conventional teachers, they are usually trained like this. But here the author is of a different mindset. He said, no, this is not done. Rather, you must try to cut short the distance as soon as possible. Then provide clear instruction is quite obvious, that you must tell all the students what is expected from them. Grabbing student by their brain here means essentially that you must give them some kind of a task where basically which involves tasks again need to be student centric rather than teacher centric, especially the initial classes. And another thing is about no more teacher versus student. Now see here again, as the author talked about the environment which you have to create in the class. If the environment is going to be of a conflict, then there will always be a kind of a war zone will be there, and there will be kind of a battle lines will be drawn, and you will see that there are students probably who cannot be controlled. Rather, they will manipulate you to behave in a way or a manner so that you are distracted from teaching, and they draw a lot of sadistic pressure also, because they are not very, very interested in fact, learning. So this is again a dimension to it. Then let me see if anything which I can skip. Don't take students' misbehavior personally. This is again an important tip. And I'm missing on something. I'm just skipping for a few tips. Now comes to discipline, right? So discipline is not a kind of a dirty word, and rather it's a multi-dimensional word. Whenever we talk about our discipline in terms of our academic organization, the very first thought which comes into our mind that it's a punishment. Think of a military organization. The moment the discipline comes into our mind, perhaps this is the way they carry out their functions as a team. It's a good way, efficient way to deliver the job, right? Because they have to work as a team. So for military people, discipline is a very, very positive word. For student, discipline is a negative word. So here, the request is from the teachers, teaching fraternity, that well, they must use this military psychology of a discipline and they must bring it to the class also. And something she has written about the biggest obstacle in learning is the fear. And students, they have a lot of fear. But the important areas what they fear first is basically whether I will be liked by others or not. So whether they are going to be accepted by their peer group or by teacher, their friends. And second important fear, the most haunting one, is how they are going to perform. Because there is a constant pressure and a competition between their siblings and their friends and other people in the class. So again, it's a teacher's responsibility to create a very positive discipline in a classroom, because this enables a better learning. Then here again, what kind of see here the sub kind of a heading, the defining a philosophy for effective classroom management. So when you are here, she has given an example of a scaffolding, normally which we see when a building is being raised. So it is about how much discipline there should be there in a class. So initially, scaffolding, the use of scaffolding is to give a support to a structure, and as the structure gains the strength, right, you keep on removing them. So same thing is over here. You see what is the kind of a age group of a student, what kind of a support system they need, and gradually as they grow up, you can reduce, you can be little liberal. So this is what the idea she has suggested, which seems to be very, say, workable. Designing discipline policy, right? So very important thing is, while designing discipline policies, what you intend to achieve. So if you intend to achieve a 100% strict environment in a class, your policy has to be accordingly. If you want to have a very learning, amenable environment in a class, then your discipline policy should be like this, right? And here's a very interesting question she illustrated in fact. That suppose you have been stopped by a traffic cop, and the cop will question you like this, that I have pulled you over because now the dash. Now, if we say that, well, because I don't know why you have stopped me, so this is the thing means you are not ready to accept. But in case you say, well, I jumped the red light. So probably you are owning up, and probably this is going to make you a little more sensitive, and for next time probably you will not do that. So this is important. Another thing that she suggested, that do or Google, that classroom discipline, you will find thousands of ways, and every way of disciplining a class will be guaranteeing that, well, if you follow my trick or tricks, probably you will see a lot of discipline. But there cannot be a one kind of a rule which fits all system, right? So you have to be a little innovative, and you have to keep on doing a lot of experimentation. Once you have, now important thing which author she has brought out, that when you have all ideas that, well, these are the means and measures for bringing discipline to a class, then try to divide them into two categories. One is the punitive way and another is the positive way. The punitive way and the positive way, here punitive is more like sanctioning demerits, referrals, detentions, suspensions, bringing down the grades, reducing privileges, confinement, and so on. An idea is basically to name and shame, right? Embarrassing somebody, frightening, or restricting the student's freedom, and so on. Positive discipline technique is more like enabling, making one person realize that, well, this is where you have jumped the gun, probably this behavior is not acceptable. Fine, so this is something what she has suggested. And try to see which is more okay in your system. Rules versus procedure. So quite often we forget that, well, there is a thin line between these two things. Rules are something sacrosanct, which cannot be changed, which cannot be compromised. Procedures are more like a ways and mechanism how to ensure the rules, right? So, but here the word of caution or caveat which has been stated, that, well, either you don't make rules, but in case if you have made certain rules, then stick to it. Because if you started bending your own self-created rules, then probably there will be no end to it. And that's why a very thoughtful suggestion she has tendered that try to make as less rules as possible, right? So that probably you see that because more rules mean more consequences. So here two examples are there. One is, for example, this could be the very overarching kind of a rule that respect yourself and everybody in this room. Now, if somebody has beaten me up or somebody has used abusive language, they all fall under this category. Or somebody has said very nasty thing about my parents, probably that is also covered over here, right? So this is very overarching kind of a thing. And another thing, very positive. Say, so there was one example that say students over there, they have a habit of having gums, chewing gums, right? And if you say that, well, nobody would use chewing gum or don't chew the chewing gum or the gum in my class, probably people, they may not accept it. So there is another better way. So state rules positively, so that this way. Rather than saying don't chew the gum, you can say dispose of all gums properly. Perhaps some positivity is there. And then the final word, this is very interesting, I like it the most, I guess, in this book. The teaching tests your interpersonal communication skills, then the academic knowledge, as well as the leadership ability. And on a good day, you will be tested for all the three attributes. And you will pass in all three.
Work in progress.
The work in progress is there because I couldn't finish the book. But 2/3 portion has been covered, as I admitted.
So 1/3 is still left.
Yeah, it is still left.
Yeah.
So, but it would only be there when the Honorable Professor would be delivering her review. So after that I can join.
Yeah, sure. Good.